Happy Friday, Brian Manning here with the weekly update. Let's get right to it. So there's actually not a lot to talk about this week. We've seen mortgage rates make a nice run lower and they kind of flattened out this week, which is okay. And it's really all eyes on the Federal Reserve. Next week, we're going to wait and see what happens. They have a two-day meeting. As they adjourn their meeting, we have to wait and see what the announcement's going to be. My personal opinion is that through the Federal Reserve rate cut, and we are going to see a cut happen next week, that we're likely going to see a 0.25% rate cut. I really don't think we're going to see a 0.5%. There just hasn't been enough drastic economic news to really make a 0.5% cut on the table for them. I could be wrong. We're going to have to wait and see what happens. It's all speculation. I have no idea. We did get the European Central Bank, the ECB. They cut rates again this week as well. They did a 0.25% rate cut, so they had started this process earlier than we have. So they're now a 0.5% into their total rate cuts right now. So it's good to see that, because typically these markets are interconnected around the world. So as one is cutting rates, another federal bank is cutting rates as well. What I do want to look at though real quick is just the CPI. So this week we got the CPI report, and CPI stands for the Consumer Price Index. Bear with me for 1 minute while I get this pulled up. CPI stands for Consumer Price Index, and this is a gauge of inflation that we look at. And this is what the Federal Reserve is looking at as well. So this is for the month of August. This shows that our headline rate went from 2.9% down to 2.5%, which was good to see. But the core rate remained unchanged at 3.2%. So it's basically said that we didn't see any changes of inflation in the core rate. So the core rate is important because it strips out volatile items such as food and energy. So if we look at this, we really look at what the cause of inflation is right now. And what's unbelievable is that shelter costs have just remained very stubborn for a very long time. And this shows that shelter costs moved from 5.1% to 5.2%. I really have no idea where they get this data from, because it seems very disconnected. If you look at all the other shelter costs that are reported across the country through apartment lists, CoreLogic, etc., everywhere else we look that's pulling hard data is showing the shelter costs are going up at a rate of 3%. As far as an average is concerned, I have no idea where they're getting 5%, because it just seems very disconnected and it's been very slow to move down. Then we have motor vehicle insurance. Motor vehicle insurance, it had to move lower. It went from 18.6% down to 16.5%. Again, I just don't think that no matter what the Federal Reserve does with interest rates, they're not going to affect motor vehicle insurance. And then we have everything else. So what's interesting is, so inflation on a month over month basis moved at 0.28%. So of the inflation that moved, shelter made up 0.23% of this, motor vehicle insurance 0.02. Everything else, all of the other goods that we're paying for as consumers across the country, only increased by 0.03%. So as far as I'm concerned, if we look at this, truly, if we look at the goods across the country, only going up at 0.03% to me would mean that inflation is relatively under control. Not a lot to talk about today. Really, like I said in the beginning, all eyes are on the Federal Reserve next week, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens there. I'm around all weekend. If you want to learn how we're closing purchase transactions in 10 days start to finish, give me a call. Happy Friday. Hope you have a great day.